Hello there, my name is Martin Henley. This is the Effective Marketing YouTube channel. And if you've spent a second here, you will know that I'm on a mission to give you everything you need to be successful in your business. Now, as far as I know, the only way for you to be successful in your business, I'm out of breath, is to be more effective with your sales and marketing. So I'm here giving you everything I know. I'm pulling anyone I can find who has something interesting, useful to share with you. And we respond, we react to the very best of marketing content and the very worst of marketing content on the internet. And every other Wednesday, we do the news with the concierge of co-creation at Crazy Might Work. It's Mel.
Hi, hi everyone.
I did better that time. Do you think people will know that I just carried a child down the stairs? Probably.
No, I think they would have no idea that that's what's just happened.
I think they'd have
Very,
absolutely no idea that I just hurriedly carried a child down the stairs. How are you, sister?
very well. Yes, very well. About to have a holiday in a couple of weeks, and business is going extremely well. We've hit our annual target, and we've got 6 months to go. So we're pretty excited.
I love that. When you hit your annual target with 6 months to go, that is absolutely a win. Okay, so you do
Yeah.
get to have a little boast if you want to have a little boast. Is that the boast over, or is there more for you to boast about? What's
I
happened in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, look, that'll probably do it. We're hiring. That always feels good. So we're going to be able to double down, and we've taken some great advice from a wonderful guy called Martin Henley, which has made the difference. And so now we're interviewing some interns, which look like that might actually open up some channels to other parts of the world because of their backgrounds and so on as well.
Excellent. So that's really exciting. So you're going to start driving, even though you are hitting your year target in half a year, you're going to start driving harder with your marketing, be more selective about which customers you take on, when you take them on, how you take them on. I think that's tremendously exciting. I think that's tremendously exciting. That's exactly why people should do marketing, so that they are in charge of who they deliver for and what they get in return. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's what's happening. We're really enjoying analyzing our different products as well for which ones make sense for business growth and which ones are actually not making sense.
Cool. And I think this is all hugely valuable work. So we will do a case study at the point where it explodes. We'll do a case study right then when it actually is happening. That'll be really cool. Okay, but we are here now to look at the marketing news. Has it been an interesting couple of weeks for marketing news, do you think?
Yeah. I think so. I think so. I think we
Okay.
might have a shared story. We might have the same story. Um, a couple of stories I have. One is about the changes Meta are making in terms of Facebook um, shared revenue and how they're charging and how much who gets what money, which was really a March 2021 story, but it's now starting to amp up. So I think that's becoming quite topical for those of us on Facebook. And
Okay.
then my second story is about Vegemite, who is about to turn 100 years old, which is a very Australian story. But I thought it was kind of interesting where for any business that is hitting milestones of 10 years or 20 years or 100 years and how they can make the most of that opportunity.
Okay, super cool. So we have hit on the same story. I also wanted to talk about Meta and their more generous monetization approach. And then I've got another couple of things which are quite closely related. One of them is TikTok employees accessing US user information. Dun, dun, dun. And the other one is TikTok taking far more in the way of US dollars because they are such an effective social media platform. So those are my kind of two and a half, three. But the first one is the other thing that I was looking for, because I think I'm interested to have a conversation with somebody about this, is like we are on the precipice of a global economic crisis, if we are to believe what the newspapers are telling us, and that obviously has ramifications for people and their marketing, but I haven't found a sensible pre-C kind of news story that says that. apart from the G7 met last week, and then everyone put out a news story that says the whole of the G7 are worried about this. Um, what do you think? Can we do just like a minute on this or 2 minutes on this? How are you feeling about the global economic situation?
You know, I think it depends on what industry you're in, honestly. That's my feeling about this. So, great disruptive change isn't like it's the first time this has ever happened. So it's an opportunity. It always is, and you would say that too. That that there's things that might collapse, but there becomes potentially much more opportunity, especially at a national level. So it's really making sure that you're where you are headquartered. You're making the most of the national opportunity and the regional opportunity. Um, if it becomes difficult to engage fully with the international market. But saying that, there's international market areas that are booming. It doesn't really matter where you're working from, um, despite perhaps some industries or what Elon Musk might be saying at the moment about that. So
Yes.
I think that there's always opportunity, and again, I think it's just finding the place where markets are growing, especially in local markets where you're much more with your finger on the pulse and making the most of those. So I mean, I look at the chief economist in Australia. He was very recently talking about the fastest growing companies are those that have um, students with 457 visas, so effectively recent immigrants. So, there's a lot of data that you could rely on and be inspired by to say, well, if I want to grow or if I want to grow in a particular market, do I have anyone in my company who has connections to that market? And actually, a pathway could be hiring business students to come in and connect the dots for you, because they'll have their own networks in their home countries. So, but it was a statistically significant difference between high growth companies and slow growth companies, according to the data. That the high growth companies had these interns. So, it's just being open to diversity and open to the power of the human in connecting you to other markets that are growing. There's somewhere it's going to be growing at any given time. So even though there might be, a Great Depression ahead, not everyone suffered. That's when Hewlett Packard launched right in the middle of a Great Depression. It's when Microsoft launched in the middle of a Wall Street crash and all of that. So, who's growing, where's the growth, and who do we know that is personally connected to that market?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if you were there, but I did a presentation at the City Business College in Brighton. It was either very late in 2008 or very early in 2009. And it was kind of in response to what was going on. And it was probably the nadir of my public speaking, where I just came up with this barnstorming thing where it was basically the punchline was, but it was basically like recessions are opportunities. More millionaires are created in recessions than at any other time, etc., etc. Now you have to drill down. You have to get really focused on what the value is that you deliver, because 100% people are going to have needs. Your competitors are going to go out of business. Their customers will still need stuff, etc., etc., etc. And I don't know if you remember, but there was this sign that came out in around the last that big crash, which was "Keep calm and carry on." And then the punchline of my talk was basically, with that sign, we edited it to say "Get excited and kick ass," because I mean, it really was a great thing. Um, and I still think that's probably true, but it just feels like, I mean, if you spend any time looking at the newspapers, it feels like the end of days. It feels like there's, real risk of some sort of nuclear exchange, or, there's a war right in the center of Europe. Inflation is a disaster. It feels like, and then this is only coming 2 years after like, so when these things happen every 12 years, okay, you can take stock. But really, the last great environmental impact, global impact, was the pandemic. It was only 2 years ago, and here we are now, already on this thing. So yeah, I don't know, except you're 100% right. I think you have to get really focused on what it is you do and where you can find the value you need for your business. And you need to be thinking much more cleverly about how you recruit and recruiting in networks and all of those things.
And remember, the media have just been able to say its end of days pandemic is upon us for 2 years. Now that that looks like it's starting to be yesterday's news, even though there is still a pandemic among us, what are they going to do that's going to top that? So if you've got to tell a story that beats the pandemic, it has to be that World War III is about to happen, or there'll be a worldwide economic collapse. Whether there is or not, that's they're competing with themselves. So the media, if you're a journalist trying to get front page news, if you said, things are looking a bit shaky in the automotive industry, that's not as exciting as world economic collapse, because we now have a benchmark for what's going to grab our attention. So
Yes,
I think it's not to defend the media for what's going on, but it probably, for me anyway, explains why it's got its end of days or it's not front page news.
100%. Yeah. And I think there is something, and the media is not very far away from us in marketing. We are working the media, that's what we're doing. And you're right, they have to keep upping the ante to keep it being exciting, interesting. And it's just like, where
You
does it
improved
go?
pandemic.
Yeah. But it's just like, where does it go? And then I don't. Oh, there was this program in the UK years ago, something about the news, not the 9 o'clock news, something else, Brass Eye or something about that, where they kind of motivate. They get the two politicians in an interview, and then they motivate them to go to war. I mean, it just seems to be scary in that aspect, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that there's some truth in what these concerns are. When you see what's going on in the Ukraine and all of this, and the fallout of energy prices and fuel prices and all of that.
And
Um,
food shortages and baby food shortages and yeah,
yeah, and the just the volatility of markets. But I think all of those things just mean that those who are actually calm enough to uh, understand the value they bring, no matter what is happening,
yep,
and and trust the value, and be as connected as they can be to those who they are adding value for,
yes,
then and I guess understanding that the people you're adding value for can be anywhere. They don't, that whoever we added value for so far might not be, first of all, the only people, or second of all, the only location. So it is really that moment to examine the different forces and understanding, that our service, for example, with Airbnb, how they pivoted and understood that, those who offer Airbnb facilities in, let's say, a village in Italy, those people, if no one's traveling there, can still teach us how to cook Italian food authentically
yes,
via video. So there's just a different use, but it's the same kind of service. It's having an experience that's authentic Italy, with or without traveling to the destination. So they're finding ways to find an audience, and
yes,
um, regardless of what's going on. And I think there's an equal and opposite reaction to tragedy, which is we're all wanting dopamine and oxytocin to kind of keep ourselves connected and inspired. So the products that are going to deliver dopamine is generally gaming,
yep,
and but oxytocin is that's going to be offered by those sorts of things that's being offered up by Airbnb, which is a connection with an individual somewhere that's
yes,
a lot more personal than, and that's why people want to go and stay in somebody's house in a village in Italy. It isn't just to see the village. It's to speak to someone in their language,
And live
um,
like a local.
yeah, exactly. So it's still possible to provide that level of oxytocin.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, that's what we want.
Yeah, and what do I think? I mean, so I think what I was saying in 2009 is right. I mean, people are going to have very genuine needs, and what I think good market, like incredible marketers, are really good at is reading situations, understanding situations, and adapting, understanding markets, understanding the needs of markets, and adapting to meet that need. Which is why more millionaires are created in these times, because people have more actual genuine need. People are going to move more than they'll move at any other time. Literally, like in the UK, Australia, our economies are like the teacups at the fun fair. Do you know what I mean? They move like point something of a percent ever, but actually, it's in the dynamism of actual change that real opportunity comes. That's what I think.
You're right about that period, 2008 and 9. What actually happened was people pulled out of property like rats running out of a flood. And all that capital was suddenly freed up to invest in innovation. So at that time, of course, I was at the Innovation Centre,
Yes,
and we just had a sea of investors heading our way, saying, you know what, investing in startup technology is safer than property right now. What have you got? So
yes, yes,
know, it was actually when we started setting up investor networks. So, who would have thought that that was the time you'd do that? It's because property was collapsing, and it wasn't collapsing, it was uncertain.
yes,
And so there was this sense that actually investing in small businesses, which is historically uncertain, was more certain than property at that time. And
yes,
so then you saw a few boom scenarios with sudden investment flowing.
yes. Cool. No, I think that as well. And the thing is, I think what you need to do is be paying less attention to the media, because we now know that they're on this spiral. They can't be as useful as they were previously, and be focused on what it is that you're doing and what the markets that you serve are doing. I think that is the best recommendation.
Mm.
Good. Right. So, actual news story. Should we go to an actual news story? The actual
Yeah,
news story that I've got is, where is it? I've got a headline that looks like this: Meta to roll out new monetization tools on Instagram and Facebook, including a creator marketplace. Now, this is interesting because someone you and I know, who we can't name because he does work for Google occasionally, he talks about the great. Do you know who I'm talking about? Don't name him.
yeah, I think
Cool.
so.
He talks about the great 20th century publishing scandal, swindle, which is the social media. So Facebook at one point had 2 billion contributors, and they weren't paying a penny to any of those people. So although they're coming very late to the party, I think it's interesting. Like you say, they did decide this last March, but now what they're doing is they're actually rolling it out, and they're saying that they won't take a cut until 2024, which seems to be really quite generous of Meta. Um, so this is good news. So they announced that Meta is testing a designated place on Instagram where creators can get discovered and paid for content. Meta notes that the creator marketplace allows brands to share new partnership opportunities. Once a brand finds a creator that they want to partner with, they can send a project with the details to them, including blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay, so this feels like, yeah, it feels like the TikTok creator marketplace, but it almost feels like a Fiverr or an Upwork. Where is that what they're saying? Where brands can reach out to creators and actually engage them directly in this stuff. What was your take on this story?
Yeah, I think it's, the thing that I thought was funny was the first post that I saw of this in June last year, which was a Mark Zuckerberg post. There was a whole stream of really happy comments. Um, and so I thought that was a bit odd because, that is unusual to see any announcement from Facebook be followed by a waterfall of happy happy comments. There were some that it started to get, it felt like they'd edited it. So that was just my initial reaction. Now, hey, maybe everyone's really excited and it's working out well. There was a bit of sort of, about time, but, it was saying, oh, how grateful they are and that Facebook's made their career and so forth. But I do think also the thing that I did notice was that Zuckerberg himself says that this idea of revenue share, as and when it will come back online, would be less than what Apple and others take. So he's actually named Apple. And so I just think that it's potentially a proper acknowledgement of defense in this market, of that people have a choice. So I thought that was just interesting that they've called out the fact that they are up against these other powerhouses, and I wonder if there's a sense that he's trying to create the young and happening Facebook that it was, just in the way that he's framed that statement. But yeah, all this string of happy people going, "Oh, I just love Facebook." I thought that doesn't feel like is that true?
Where did you see this? Did you see this on Facebook or did you see this on somewhere else?
Yeah,
You
this
saw
is
it on
on
Facebook. Yeah, well,
This
of
is under
course then.
right. It's a post by Mark Zuckerberg, and he says a few things in here where he says we're launching a new payout interface so creators can see how different companies' fees and taxes are impacting their earnings, and so on. And then he's like, more coming soon, and absolutely. And everyone in there is saying, love this transparency. This is great news. Amazing, Mark. Great initiative to the creators. So, yeah. I mean, there's a few, it starts to get into the usual, we don't like anything as you go on, but there's a lot of commendable, we love this, kudos from Kenya, etc.
Yes. Well, what I think is that they are a long way behind the curve. YouTube have been paying contributors for years. TikTok have been paying contributors. So they're a long way behind the curve, and they have a long way to go to catch up. And it just seems to me like Facebook have been way too. Okay, let me put it this way. If Facebook had been more generous in sharing the spoils, because we know they've made billions and billions of dollars, then I think Facebook would be a much more effective company. I think if they'd been paying contributors as long as YouTube have been paying contributors, then I think the standard of content on Facebook would be on a par somewhere with where YouTube is. But also, I think if they had been like in the old advertising model, where an ad agency would put together the ad program and take then commission from each of the platforms. If they paid commission to people who are placing ads on their platforms, then I think they would be in a much better space as well. So I think they've been too keen to hold on to the whole of the pie, and if they had divvied this out a little bit more previously, then that would be good. And now,
Yeah.
I think it might also be too late. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like they are clearly they're clearly losing out on a grand scale to YouTube and TikTok and all of these platforms, and so I think it might be too little, too late. But I'm not surprised at all that Mark Zuckerberg can engineer a really nice thread of beautiful comments after his post on Facebook. I'm not surprised by that at all. So
I really totally agree with what you're saying. I think that it's a bit like, if it were a relationship that someone said, "Why can't you be more like this other guy?" And
yes,
that Facebook is this partner who let itself go,
yes,
and suddenly this newer, fitter version wandered by, and Facebook's been sitting there, with a broken leg on the sofa, ordering their partner about and being waited on hand and foot.
yes,
And then suddenly there's this very appreciative, partnership kind of competitor walking by,
yes.
and Facebook's gone, oh, I suppose I'll get out of my pajamas. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, but why is it always a relationship analogy with you? Always, 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 always. But now Facebook, instead of rolling up their sleeves and really competing and reestablishing themselves, what they're still doing is trying to undermine the new guy. Yeah, yeah, but like he smells, or like, yeah, yeah, but he's got a tattoo. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah,
On
no one
amazing.
thinks they're cool. So
Yeah, you're
yeah, it's like yeah, instead of like, okay, we're Facebook, we are really good. Let's show you how really good we are. They're like, oh, well, they're not very good either, really. Like we might be shit, but they're also not really that great. And the thing is, they are at war. Like Apple are killing them right now, and so they are at war with Apple. So it's like all it shows is, what does it show? It just shows how clearly insecure, rightly insecure Facebook are about this Apple relationship, because Apple are kind of showing them their. I keep wanting to say this thing. It's really quite crude South Africanism. They're showing them their arse. That's what the phrase is.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
don't have to. They really are.
And then
So
yeah.
yeah. I mean, do you really see any way back for Facebook or for Meta now? Instagram. I mean, WhatsApp is solid. WhatsApp could. Well, even then, there's new things like Telegram, etc. So I don't see it. The thing is, Facebook broke themselves when they started with the algorithm nonsense. There was a time, there was 100% a time where I would open Facebook and I would sit there and I would read everything until I started reading stuff that I'd read before. Because actually, what it was content being produced by people I knew and cared about. And they were talking about the things that I knew and cared about, which was the people I knew and cared about. So there was absolutely a time where I would sit there and read it until I stopped reading, and I might be there for 25 minutes. Do you know what I mean? And that might happen 2 or 3 times a day. Whereas now, I could go weeks without looking at Facebook, because I know that if I read it for a minute and a half, I'm going to read something I've read before already, even though I haven't read it for 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? It's like they absolutely broke it themselves, and they've really done nothing. And I think this is probably too little, too late. Like, and in the articles, it says they're trying to take people away from TikTok. They just don't understand the way the world works. It's like people aren't exclusively TikTok creators. They create their content and they put it on TikTok because TikTok remunerates them with attention and audience and money. And they put it on YouTube because YouTube remunerates them with attention and audience and money. And the same with all of these platforms. And Facebook has just been sitting on the whole of the pie for too long. That's what I think.
Yeah. You know what? I would normally be the opposing view who says the world's wonderful in 10 different ways. But I actually, in this case with Facebook, I just don't get it. I think they're trying to walk it back,
Yeah.
and they're trying to engineer some kind of messaging, we care. But in the very first appearance of this message, they said, for now, we're making this, um, you know, cost free or something. But, in a couple of years, well, we're going to have paywalls and this. I sort of feel like they're already preempting that they're going to make more money out of us. So I don't know. I think there's a few mistakes in that. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel like it's a pure giveaway in an acknowledgement of these creators indefinitely. It's almost saying we'll try it. It's a pilot.
Yes.
We'll see if that makes everyone happy. We'll buy roses for a couple of years and then, we'll go back to our old ways. Like that's how it kind of feels when you read the narrative in there. But I do think it's interesting that they're looking at different business models where people actually are getting, remunerated inside their platform because they have realized that that's what's needed. It's just whether that is going to land. People are sort of already, the horse is bolted. Yeah.
Yeah, it really has. And what is the other thing I think? I think that, YouTube realized this in 2015. Do you know what I mean? And TikTok realized this in 2017. And it's like Facebook are so clever that they're 7 and 5 years behind everyone else. And just realizing that actually we moved into a content world. Do you know what I mean? That's what happened. They had the very best thing. It could not possibly have been better. All the people I know and care about talking about everything I know and care about. That was perfect. They need to roll it back to 2013. That's what they need to do. They need to take out all the algorithm, just give me the content of the people I know and care about, and it would be amazing again. That's what I think.
I agree.
Okay, good. 100%. Cool. So we're in agreement. Hello there. This is part 2 of the marketing news. The universe was against us on Monday, and so we are here on Wednesday looking again. We have the concierge of co-creation at Crazy Might Work. It's Melanie Farmer. No respecter no respecter of continuity. I knew she wouldn't, so I didn't either. This is where we are. So we spoke at length, I think, we spoke about a couple of things. We spoke about the state of the economy. We spoke about Facebook being too stingy with their income and not sharing it enough with creators and agencies and those kinds of people. We had another couple of stories. The next one, I think, is the one about TikTok. TikTok, can we do this? Oh, that's the Vegemite story. That's our feel-good story at the end. So, as BuzzFeed reporting on this, and what they're telling us is that leaked audio from 80 internal TikTok meetings shows that US user data has been repeatedly accessed from China. Agree and exit. The TikTok tapes. So for years, TikTok has responded to data privacy concerns by promising that information gathered about users in the United States is stored in the United States rather than China, where ByteDance, the video platform's parent company, is located. But according to leaked audio from more than 80 internal TikTok meetings, China-based employees of ByteDance have repeatedly accessed non-public data about US TikTok users, exactly the type of behavior that inspired former President Donald Trump to threaten to ban the app in the United States. So, what do you think, Melanie Farmer?
Look, it doesn't surprise me that this is the case because my understanding is that TikTok is owned by the Chinese. That's my understanding.
Yes.
And so it is highly likely that all data is going to be either duplicated in a digital twin or retained or held in China. I do imagine, what would this headline read if it was reversed, where an American app was accessing Chinese data, from China?
We don't even have to imagine, do we? Because Facebook, YouTube, Google is all banned in China. So the Chinese don't mess about. They don't whine. Oh, they're accessing our data. They're like, no, you don't get to come here. So I think that's a major difference.
Yeah, big old firewall.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is interesting. I mean, the fact that it's not public data, this private data that they're accessing, I don't know what this means. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, how can anyone possibly be surprised? This is the point of these platforms, is to harvest data. The Americans are enormously protective of the fact that they have big tech, Google, Facebook, Twitter, blah, blah. So they are enormously protective of the fact that they are the only people that get to access this data. And, how can anyone, this is the point of these platforms. And it's the point of these platforms because of the way the Americans specifically have put these platforms together. So it's not like this is an original idea by the Chinese. So, it just astounds me that that anyone's surprised by this, or this is even news. Like, if you use these platforms, they get your data. We've known this since 2016. Like, we've definitely known it since 2019 with the social dilemma. It made it clear to all of us. Wake up, America. This is the gig. This is the gig.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is that there is this nascent racism that's going on, that Americans are so much better than the Chinese, and it's so much better that the Americans have the data rather than the Chinese. So I don't particularly enjoy that. I'll be honest with you. Where I am right now is I probably trust the Chinese government over the American government. The Chinese government hasn't been to war with 20%, 25% of the countries on the planet in the last 60 years. So that's how I kind of feel about it. Is it's kind of like, yeah, this is the point. This is what these platforms do. And whether the data remains in the US or is transported to what difference does that make in the globalized tech world that we're living in now? I'm sure the CEO of TikTok can as easily access anything he wants if it's in the States or if it's in China. So I think they're complaining about what we've all known is the cost of social media, like actually for most of the last 7 or 8 years, So yeah,
but for me, what's interesting is what this means legally. So, what are the legal implications as opposed to the policy? So, your policy is one thing, but is this illegal? And if it's not illegal, should it be illegal? If it should be, what law is going to be made? I mean, there's these sorts of emerging technologies, and it's still really emerging if you think about the scheme of human existence. Um, we don't know where space begins, for example. So space law is another place where the legal implications of launching rockets and having satellites in space, it's starting to happen where just anyone can launch a rocket, and it's now $10,000 to do that. A small rocket, but you can do it. And if that's true, and it now crashes down somewhere and lands on someone's house, at the moment, the understanding is that the country from which it was launched is responsible for the recovery and cleanup of that crashing down. So, but we haven't actually agreed as a planet where space begins and where Earth ends. Is it 50 miles up? Is it, so this is a big question that we
yeah,
haven't actually legally come to an agreement on that. So I think that what for me is interesting about these things is we can get upset, but the first question is it illegal? Second question is, should it be illegal? And if it should be illegal, then what is the international law on this sort of thing? So it was a lot easier when space was the ocean, but now space is this kind of nebulous, out there digital world. What's the legal protection and court of law and so forth for. So I think that this is an ongoing battle with the world of law and lawyers and law as a sector. There are notable exceptions, but in general, very archaic. So, that there's certainly some of our clients who are real notable exceptions in this space, constantly winning innovation awards for keeping up with the times and leading, in fact, around spaces like digital law and space law. But yes, I think it's certainly poking at what is actually illegal and what should be, and how would you then report and prosecute in those situations.
yeah. But I think we have the precedent there as well, which is the horse is pretty much bolted. It's like there is no government that is big enough to actually challenge these platforms. The governments are challenging the platforms all of the time. They get it completely wrong. They find them guilty. They find them whatever it is, $100 million. They make $100 million a second. So it's like it's completely ineffectual. So yeah, I mean the thing is, whether it's legal or otherwise, we've all consented to it. When we sign up for these platforms, we say, and if we read, like I did one time, I presented to the EU in Malta about this, and it's like literally, we all consent. Like if you read this, you wouldn't consent. No one's read it, but everyone's consented. So it's gone. The horse is bolted. They do challenge them. They are behaving illegally. The fines they put in place are completely ineffectual. So like it's well established that these platforms are already much bigger than any of the governments. There is no international jurisdiction. There is no international body that can do anything more. Um, yeah, I think it's insane like that, and I think it's good that there is actually now another platform. I think it's astounding that when all these platforms arrived, 2004, 2005, 2006, there has been a slew, but nothing has broken like the hegemony of the big Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Like there's still the big five. TikTok is the only one. You could argue Snapchat, but not really. TikTok is the only one that's really provided a challenge to those big four. And I think it's healthy that there's a bit of competition. That's all. And I trust the Chinese with my data over the Americans personally. Okay, so there is a part two to this story. Are you ready for part two of this story? So
Oh my gosh,
part two of this story is Bloomberg in the UK reporting this. TikTok turns on the money machine. So ByteDance's hit video app is on track to triple revenue this year to $12 billion, threatening Facebook's hold on social media. So what they're saying is they've got a little case study here from Alyssa McKay, who now earns more than $100,000 a year on TikTok. TikTok changed my life, blah, blah, blah. TikTok rating $4 billion 2021, but it's going to go to $12 billion this year. This kind of goes back to our original story, which was about how we think that Facebook has screwed things up by not being generous enough with their revenues, whereas TikTok is doing exactly the opposite and reaping the rewards. Well, firstly, get people's data, get rich is the first thing. The second thing, I think, is be generous with your contributors and your audience, and you will have a better product. So this is exactly what I was kind of referring to when we spoke about Meta coming like 7 years late to the party. We'll give you a little bit if you produce content for us. It's like the wrong model.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, a bit late. Yeah, too little, too late. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's good. I like. I mean, it's better than it not happening. That's
Yes.
like I think it is. It's actually also we had it in Australia where Qantas was pretty relaxed because there was no one else,
Yes.
and when everyone else showed up, there was a lot of um, I guess national pride in Qantas, and the sentiment locally was we don't want anyone else. But of course, once Virgin and all these others started to come in, smaller airlines, Qantas had to pull up their socks because they now had competition, and so
Yes.
now there's an alternative. Because if you complained to Qantas when there was no other option, did they have to give a damn what you said?
No.
And so they in the 90s went through a massive transformation culturally in terms of their customer service. So they're known for quality. They won't fall out of the sky, but they were not known for customer service. Neither is British Airways. They might
Yes.
say that they are, but they're really not known for that. It's not your first choice for customer service. And so these big airlines, um, but with the emergence of Emirates and Qatar Airlines, and the incredible service you get on the Singapore Airlines, these others have had to pick up their game. So I feel like on a global scale, TikTok is saying, "I'm sorry, I'm going to provide an alternative,"
Yes.
and
100%. And we're going to do it better.
far more consumer driven and focused on my customer. You carry on though, you do you, and let's see how we go.
And isn't there kind of a beautiful poetic irony that it's communist China that needs to remind the world that global capitalism depends on competition? Isn't there? Isn't that
That is hilarious.
that is hilarious? Okay, cool. Good. Which brings us to our last story, which is it doesn't bring us to our last story. We're going to our last story. um, but this is an exercise in how to do marketing. So this was your other story, which is Vegemite being 100 years old. And actually, it's not 100 years old. You deceived us. It's actually 98 years old. So here we are on the vegemite.com.au. And they are telling their own Vegemite story. So they're 98 years old, but they're already marketing the fact that they're going to be 100 years old. So they must be confident that they're going to make it now. I think it's September next year. So can I make this bigger? I can. It tastes like Australia. So this is a great story, Melanie Farmer. This is a great story. So October 25, 2023. So they're very confident they're making it through the next 13 months and they will be 100 years old. Before we get into this, I just want to show you the second result when I searched for this, which was Vegemite writes to the Queen seeking a 100th birthday card.
Yes. Yeah, that's the story. It's how they're actually activating this story and
Yes.
effectively piggybacking. It's piggyback marketing, but on everything that has to do with this number 100. And I
Yes.
love that there's if you go on Google Images, you'll see a picture of a big truck saying happy anniversary or something like that to the Queen. We look
Yeah.
forward to receiving our letter. I don't know if it'll show up on Google Images.
Okay, let's have a look. Vegemite Queen. Let's go that way. Oh, it's going to get more.
More
Vegemite
weird.
Queen.
There it is, third one.
This
That's
one?
it.
This is the
Yep.
truck. It's not that big a truck.
But you can see in the background there's the London Eye, I think it is, the Ferris
Yeah, or
wheels.
is it Big Ben? Vegemite makes cheeky request to the Queen ahead of 100th birthday. G'day, Your Majesty. As we celebrate your birthday down under, just a heads up that next year we're turning 100. Can't wait for your letter.
Yeah.
This is an exercise, and that is the London Eye. This is an exercise in how to do marketing, isn't it? It's beautiful. It really is beautiful.
Their
You know what?
branding is kept like that. Everything is the color, the logo. Like they haven't done anything clever. That truck is the logo.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and I didn't know. I mean, it's here, the whole story. Um, so basically, yeah, I didn't know, but I'm kind of inspired. I might actually make a video about Vegemite because it's quite an inspirational story. So, like from the very beginning, what they did is they went out to the Australian public and said, "Look, we're coming up with this thing. Name it for us." So the very like they talk about this in social media, don't they? It's like how to engage audiences. Vegemite did it in like 1923.
Yeah.
So this might be the example of the best ever. Um,
And it's
yeah,
chosen by his daughter.
yeah,
I mean,
and then what's that?
we lost Vegemite out of Australia for a bit, and then Bega, who make cheese, bought it back. So
Yes.
if you want to invest in Bega, that's my investment tip of the day
Yes.
because they have an incredible management board. That's really a local south of Sydney um, cheese maker, and but they have some excellent products, craft peanut butter. There's various products they have, and one of these is Vegemite. So
Yes. So listen to this. It didn't work. Poor sales of Vegemite resulted in its name being changed in 1928 to Parwill. Walker, who was the founder, was determined to emulate the success of Marmite, and the logic behind the rebranding strategy was simple. If Marmite, then Par will. This is like genius.
story, right?
And
Yeah.
then in 1937, a Limerick competition with substantial prizes, including Pontiac cars, was the promotion to not only encourage entries, but also sales of Vegemite spread nationwide. Following the successful promotion, the Vegemite brand gained official product endorsement from the British Medical Association in 1939 and began advertising in the British Medical Journal. So this is the thing about this, I think, is that this is how you do marketing. And Vegemite have done it for almost 100 years.
I think that Vegemite is Australia's Guinness because if you go to Dublin and you check out Guinness, that they are full of amazing stories. They were the first to have pensions, marry a Guinness man, all of that. So there's brands that really get into the psyche of the world, but that are anchored in the country of origin, so that they become part of the story of that country.
Yes.
And and so but what I love is that the opportunity for anyone who's turning 10, because we're turning 10 in a couple of years, turning 10, turning 100, turning 50, is actually understanding what is going on in the world and how do you do a lead in. Because my experience, I've been in many companies that are about to turn 50 or have turned 50 while I was there, those organizations, it's very insular, that they're kind of looking for their own story about what it means to turn 50 and their heritage. But I like how Vegemite um, went outward and said, what's 100 around us that we can associate? So they're now associating with the Queen. I mean, what else is they're going to be looking at everything that's 100 and everything that's about to turn 100 that is effectively associating their brand with that. Now imagine they've now associated with the Queen. So there's who else is going to? If the Queen is about to hit this 100 thing, then certainly there's going to be other very anchored in heritage and history brands that are also So you can imagine they're going to do this as a campaign.
100%. And I think you're right. We've got an echo. Am I coming back through your things? I'll go quieter. 100%. It's Guinness and Vegemite are the two brands in the world that have managed to ingrain themselves into the national psyche and the national image of the countries that they come from. And that is huge. And I would say probably Vegemite even more than Guinness. Because someone said to you Australia sandwich spread, you'd say Vegemite. Like
Yes.
if someone were to say to you Australia food, you'd probably say Vegemite. Where if
Yeah.
someone said to you Ireland drink, you might say Guinness, you might say whiskey. Do you know what I mean? So Guinness the brand, or it might be whiskey the drink. I am inspired. I'm going to make a video about Vegemite and how to do marketing. And the marketing, the genius of this marketing is they've put it all on the website. So I'm not even going to have to research it. Do you know what I mean? I literally have to go to their website and they've done the work for you as well. Vegemite, what an inspiring brand from Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that Bega, because what the executives at Bega, they made the decision to increase their intellectual property. They have been significantly growing. My financial advisor has recommended them as a stable, successful company to invest in. But they made the decision that Vegemite should not leave our shores, and so they imagine the cost of getting it back.
Yes,
But they said this is an Australian brand. It's like selling Qantas. It's just madness.
yes,
Qantas. If you said an Australian airline, it's Qantas.
yes,
So you definitely need. So I think that we're pretty happy to see it come back to the country. And any brand that has a country of origin, you want it to stay with that country. You
you
don't
really
want to
do.
see, that British Airways is owned by Germany or something like that. Would be just insane. So I
Yes,
love that Bega stepped in and said, "We're going to save the day and bring this spread home."
100%.
um,
The thing is, I can't get over the genius of this marketing. This is like you're saying, is what you do. Like we were saying before, like the essence of marketing is really, in this instance, it's about association. Do you know what I mean? It's like literally what's going on in the world. What are people interested in? What are people excited about? How do we kind of get on that little gig? Do you know what I mean? And you're right. Like association with the country, with the Queen, with the 100, with the everything, and also the other thing I want to say is there's a little Australian. No, not a little Australian twang is what I was going to say. This is heavily Australian accented. Do you know what I mean? This is how Australians engage with the world, like at their very best.
and how do you get away with saying "G'day, Your Majesty"? I mean, that's you don't get more,
Familiar.
mateship and than that. So
Yes.
because of the brand and the country, but it's also a bit of a respectful nod that we're in the colonies. You
Yes.
know, technically you own us, you could say, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not it's not disrespectful. It is just saying we look forward to your letter,
Yes.
because
Yes.
you're the Queen. So I think they've hit the balance right with that particular message, and I look forward to seeing what else they do. And I also think for listeners today, it's an opportunity to think if you're a young company or whatever you are, that if you're turning 10 or 50 or whatever, what's going on in the world that is also turning 10 or 50 or whatever, and this is an opportunity to learn from, these marketers and think, what could I do to celebrate my organization turning a significant age? What else is out there that is close to that, and which supports and strengthens my own brand, and then you've got yourself a campaign, and you can thank Vegemite for that.
100%. And the other thing, what's the other thing I think about this? It's like these associations are really important. So just be like thinking, who do I want to associate with, or who do I want to be associated with? Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is genius marketing, 100% genius marketing. Thank you for bringing us this story, Mel, even though you got us excited telling us they were 100 already. This is the other thing, is like they're ramping up. Do you know what I mean? It's like they are already working.
Actually 100, yeah. Drop them out of the sky, who knows?
Love it. You are an absolute legend. Thank you so much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I think I've enjoyed it more because it took place over 2 installments.
Yeah, it looks like we've been talking for 24 hours behind the scenes, and then we've just had to edit.
People have no idea the commitment that's going into these videos. Huh?
You could have, yeah.
Okay, you're an absolute legend. I'm going to put something in your diary for about 2 weeks' time. We'll do this again if that's cool.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect. Talk soon. Thanks, Martin.
Okay, have a great week. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.